Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about Dexter Resurrection Season 1 Episode 4. The episode is called Call Me Red. Full spoilers from the start of this review as always, and just to remind you guys, if you're enjoying this review and want to help the channel out, then be sure to hit the like button or also comment on the episode. And you can also subscribe to the channel and share me out on social media. Start off by saying I think this is the best episode of this season so far. A lot of it has to do with the Dexter going to the serial killer dinner party stuff, because there's a lot of enjoyable stuff in that part of the episode. But I'll start with the Harrison plot because that is easily the weaker this week. It's just getting really repetitive, this plot. They just seem to be running through the same thing. Batista gets a lead and finds out that Harrison's in the area nearby, and he sort of clocks that as a bit suspicious, so he goes to see him. Harrison claims that he went to Iron Lake to try and reconnect with his dad, which of course is true, but he leaves out the stuff about finding out that he is a serial killer, because at one point Batista even brings up the theory that Greta had all those years ago about Dexter being the Bay Harbor butcher. But anyway, Harrison immediately tries to change the subject. When that comes up, he finds an excuse to leave. And then there's a second meeting at the end of the episode, because during the episode, Batista hears about the murder at the hotel, and that part was quite sloppy because it's actually Elsa who blurts it out to him without really thinking at all. And I get why she did it. She did it because she assumed that's why Batista was talking to Harrison in the first place. But even so, it was just a little bit sloppy the way, and a bit heavy-handed the way that all came about, because she comes up to Batista. It's like, hey, you buddy. I'm exaggerating, but that kind of thing. It's like, if you think Harrison had anything to do with that murder, then you're crazy. And Batista's like, wait, what murder? And then he goes to see the police, the two detectives who we've seen working on the case. He mentions to them that he's got a similar case, like with a similar MO, and he brings up the Bay Harbor butcher from all those years ago. And so this is making him even more suspicious when he hears about the details of this case at the hotel. Probably the Harrison and Batista stuff, their kind of meetings, are the best thing about that plot this episode. I think they could have condensed it into one big scene with the two of them. I don't like they could have rewrote it. I don't think you really needed two separate scenes, but those scenes are quite well done, and it does add at least a little bit of intrigue. Stuff with Harrison and Elsa, but potential girlfriend, because they keep going to the well of will they, won't they. They're slowly getting closer. And I don't mind Elsa, by the way. I think she's perfectly likeable, and the actress is doing a decent job. And they actually do have pretty solid chemistry, I'll say that, but it's just the plot seems to be dragging on without them doing that much. So the big scene with them in the episode is that Harrison, all stressed out from Batista coming after him, goes to Elsa. She offers him to spend the night on the couch because it's getting late, and she kind of says, yeah, you know, those trains can be pretty creepy late at night when you're on your own on one. And he kind of misconstrues that a bit and goes in for a kiss, and she pulls away. And she's very fair about it. Like, she doesn't say, hey, I'm not interested, get the hell out of here. She says, it's not that I don't want to, but you're in a very tense place right now. You're going through stuff, which is fair enough. And Harrison kind of gets all flustered by this and rushes out. I just think they're getting very repetitive with the will they, won't they between those two. And they're not really giving Elsa that much to do beyond that kind of stuff that we've seen. She's a single parent. Her and Harrison have a little bit of like a will they, won't they type thing. She defends him, supports him, but they're not really giving her that much to do. I think you either move on and have them get together and move things on, or you just find something for her to do which is a little bit more meaty. Otherwise you slowly write her out. Harrison stuff is starting, and this whole investigation is starting to get like really dull. The way it ends is that Harrison is getting so paranoid and worried about what Batista said and how Batista is amping up the pressure on him. Then it looks like he's going to go to the police station and he's heading there to confess, it would seem. And Dexter shows up behind him, puts his hand on his shoulders. It's like, wait a minute. And that's how we end the episode. So I'll give them some credit because they're not dragging this stuff out too long, because that was my worry, that it might be the back half of the season before Harrison and Dexter meet up again and reconnect and we get that big scene. Because really that stuff, as I said last episode, I do find very tedious, and I'm not really that bothered about Harrison and Dexter. So I was worried they were going to really drag that out. So the fact they've done it at the end of episode 4, I will give them a little bit of credit there. Moving over to the Dexter plot. So at the end of last week's episode, after he'd killed the serial killer, he saw the invitation to this party, this gathering of serial killers, and he was intrigued by it. Dexter does wrestle a little bit with it. He's going back and forth with Harry. There's some pretty funny stuff in that, because of like Harry bringing up there's only one other like known time that you've had a collection of serial killers getting together over dinner, and he mentions like it was some sort of like something to do with a hog farmer or something like that. So that was pretty funny stuff. Dexter ultimately decides to go, and throughout the episode he's kind of doing it under the guise of, okay, this is an intel mission, I need to find out more about these people. And he's justifying it to Harry, saying that he's very much gone because the end game is to take them out. Harry is suspicious throughout the episode. It's that old chestnut of, are you getting too close to these people, Dexter? Especially since he does strike up quite the connection with one of them. But Dexter is insisting throughout that no, the end game is to take care of them. It's just I have to do it in the right way. I can't rush it because it would look suspicious. Uma Thurman, Charlie, her name is her character, she actually picks him up, and she's the one who's a little bit suspicious and is like checking him out, and she checks him for any weapons when they get there. He says, I do have a corkscrew in my sock, but it's just because I wasn't sure what I was walking into. I still don't. The thumbprint. So I'm guessing Dexter has the resources where he was able to scan Red's thumbprint, and he was accepted in. And this is where we meet the Peter Dinklage character. So he's actually the one behind all this. He's hired the Uma Thurman character to kind of do his bidding in a way. So he's the one who set this whole dinner up. He's called Leon, and he's very good in this episode. For anyone who knows Peter Dinklage or saw him in Game of Thrones, you know that he's got a lot of personality, a lot of charisma, and that he does monologues very well, but he does monologue in a way where it doesn't really feel so much like a monologue. it kind of feels a bit more natural. Like, he just gives so much life and energy to it, then you're into what he's saying. And it's the same in this. Like, he's having a lot of fun in this role. Like, there's just this little bit of a playful sort of menace to him, and he's a little bit over the top, because that's kind of what the character is, but it's not too much where it's like ridiculous. It comes across how much fun he's having, and that definitely adds to the character, because he says to Dexter at one point he's not actually a killer, but he just likes to meet them. An honour to meet Red, as he thinks it is. Got a whole museum of memorabilia and things from different serial killers, and this is one of the things which I will pick at a little bit and say, yeah, that doesn't quite add up, maybe, because you've got all these different people. So you've got a massive serial killer like Dahmer, you've got Trinity, he's there. So I do quite like, even though that's just an excuse to have another like nostalgic type beat, you've also got one who turned out to be Dexter's like adopted brother, Brian Moser, but you've got him in there. So I do like that some of the show's serial killers are being matched up with like real life classic serial killers, because that does make sense. A bit inconsistent, then Red is now known as like this massive serial killer, because don't forget, his sort of spree of murders have only taken place in the last few weeks. Like, it's a very recent thing. It's a little too early to be calling The Dark Passenger a legend of serial killers. But speaking of legends, in what has to be the film reference of the week, another name that gets mentioned is the New York Ripper. Yes, this guy.
All the rest of them, young and beautiful and healthy, while I rock to death in bed in a lousy, stinking hospital.
Another small nitpick with the dinner party stuff is that they ask Dexter or Red for a trophy to prove that it's him, and I guess to put in like the museum, and he produces the ID badge of one of the victims, one of the taxi drivers, and it's got blood on, and that's just a bit lame for me, because it would be very easy to fake that. Okay, they can see it's real blood and all that, and I guess maybe the Peter Dinklage character knows, then okay, this was one of the victims. But even so, it would be very easy to fake. To me, that wouldn't be enough. In a museum of like artifacts, it's fine. It's a fine idea. Like, as I said, I'm enjoying Dinklage in this role. It's not wholly original, but it's fine. And we see that at one point there's fancy food. So again, it's very much like a bit like the Hannibal Lecter type stuff, because Uma Thurman's character Charlie says, I found these upmarket cookbooks at your place. The guests start to arrive, so you can see how they're setting up all these characters who, like Dexter, potentially over the season is gonna maybe kill or attempt to kill. So you've got a lot of big faces here. One of the biggest is Christian Ritter, so she shows up. Her name's Mia. Dexter is the one that that really connects with her, or she's the one Dexter connects with, because they kind of share this thing where they do seem strangers at this party almost. They're kind of like, yeah, I don't really know what this is. This stuff is really creepy, even though they're killers themselves. It's like, we can't quite relate to this. This is really weird. Because Mia says at one point that, hey, I'm just here for the money. So you've got a variety of like well-known faces, because Neil Patrick Harris shows up. He's called Lowell, and he becomes the target for Dexter in this episode, because there's this whole thing about presentations, and he's the one who's presenting on this night, and he reveals that he's been tracking this woman online, and there's this sort of thing about, so he's an online stalker. Well, if he tries that shit with him, I'll fuck him up, basically. But that's like his presentation, and we find out he's been tracking her for like a few weeks now. So that sort of becomes Dexter's thing in the episode. Partly he's getting close to Mia, and that's the thing Harry's kind of saying, so instead of connecting with your son, you're going out on a date with this woman. And he says, well, it's not a date, it's an intel mission. He's keeping tabs on Lowell. And he does kill him later on in the episode. So we get him on the table just before he's about to make his move. Just as he's about to pounce on the girl, Dexter appears from behind and knocks him out with a needle. And then he's on the table. And it's a bit weird, really, because considering Lowell thinks Dexter is Red, I don't know why he's not more suspicious or more like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? Considering he would know Red's MO, and he would know that Red doesn't go after other serial killers. So he plays it cool in the moment. Like, he says things like, hey, I've been on the other end long enough times just to accept that when my time's up. And that's fine, but at the same time, it's a bit weird he wouldn't be like, what the fuck are you doing, Red? This isn't your MO, when he's about to kill him. Because Lowell says, well, just do me one solid, like, knock me out first. And he's like, no. And right before he kills him, Dexter reveals his true identity. I'm Dexter Morgan. And it's like, well, who the fuck is that? And he says, the Bay Harbor Butcher, and he kills him. And I think that's the moment of regaining power, like right at the end before he kills Lowell. And it's a good moment. It's a decent enough scene. I don't think they do that much with Neil Patrick Harris. He is one of the people who is a little bit more wasted in the episode. He's fine, but I never felt like he was that into the role, or like you really got the full-on charisma that actor normally brings to part. Also, I think Uma Thurman was a bit wasted in this episode, because I was obviously looking forward to what they were going to do with her character based on last week's, and at that point I sort of assumed she was the head of all this. I didn't realise she was doing the bidding for Peter Dinklage's character. Really get from her in this episode is that she's a bit more suspicious of like Dexter. Leon seems so enamoured with the whole thing, and this is the first time that Red, who he believes is Red, has shown up to one of these events, so he's like all excited. So I thought they could have done more with the Uma Thurman character, and maybe they still will. She's obviously going to pop back up in future weeks. But you can see what they're setting up, and I think there's a lot of good stuff at the dinner party. I also enjoyed the chemistry between Michael C. Hall and Christian Ritter, and I think there was some good stuff with her character, Mia. Like, I think that's a good role for her. It's definitely in like the Jessica Jones type of mold. My only concern is that maybe you will get this thing where she'll just become another version of Lumen, who we had in season 5 of the original show, or she'll become another Hannah, and maybe not as good as those, but it could just become, well, we've seen this before. We've seen this stuff of him getting closer to someone who's quite similar to him. I hope they put some sort of a twist on it. But I did enjoy their scenes together and think the actors had good chemistry. And yeah, they start hanging out and he starts learning more about her life. Like, she mentions how she had a sister, Hazel, I think her name was, who the sister was like the more liked out of the two. Like, she was the more like happy-go-lucky one, the more like successful one, and she mentions how Hazel tragically died in the past, and that was like a big turning point for me. I like the scene where she gets him a vegan donut or croissant, I should say. I think it was a croissant, but some sort of pastry anyway, like a vegan one, which does look absolutely disgusting, I'll say. But so we find out that it's Red who was like the vegan guest who Uma Thurman mentioned last week. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the episode. Most of the Dexter stuff I did enjoy in this episode. And I quite like some of the fun they're having with like presentations and like get-togethers and almost this idea of like how villains can have their own kind of like almost AA style meetings, because that's what Leon says at one point to Dexter. He says that this is why we get here, so this is why we come here, because you can be yourself and express yourself. And he does say to Dexter, like, in the future I'll expect a presentation. That's what the money was for, partly. And I think it's implied that, you know, maybe at the next one, but there will be more meetings, he says. And that's something which I'm relieved about, because that was one concern last week. I was like, okay, they've set up this really good idea, and I'm just worried they're gonna quickly wrap it up and it'll just be like one episode and that'll be it. There is potential there. I'll give them that. We'll see what they do with it, but there's definitely potential there. Was a much better episode, and definitely the best episode of the season. I think what's interesting now is, like, now that Dexter's approached Harrison, how does that all gel together with the other plot that's going on with this collection of serial killers? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media. But thanks for listening, guys. Keep watching TV. I'll see you again soon. Bye.
You're like a goddamn horror movie villain.
There certainly are some similarities.
What makes you think I even want you in my life?
I know about Ryan Foster.
I'm talking about collaborating on a kill.
Maybe I'll tell Mia who I really am.
Or maybe she'll tell Prater you're the Bay Harbor butcher.
There's a problem.
I hired you to make problems go away. Did I make a mistake?